There's a little exercise that you gave in here related to that, and I've been doing it, and I enjoy it very much. This is one part of it that I would like you to clarify, and it's that exercise where you say, we'll take a piece of paper and write down for 1 minute how I'd like to feel, another few minutes of what I'd like to have, and then the last few minutes on what I want, what I'm going to do today. And that's the part I don't understand what was meant by that, what I'm going to do today, probably to try into those feelings. So I try to do the exercise, but I think the only thing I come up with is, well, I'm going to try to hold myself aware of my feelings.
Well, the reason that we were taking it further is when you decide how you want to feel, and then you try to think thoughts that you think would feel like that. Often, once you achieve that, then ideas of what you might do that might feel like that will come about too. In other words, they all dovetail together. First there is the thought, and then there is the word, and then there is the action. That's the most comfortable unfolding. So once you beat the drum of something in thought, enough that it stirs an emotion within you, now all kinds of thoughts are going to come that follow that, which means it's going to become easier and easier for you to speak about it. And once you're speaking about it pretty regularly, then there's enough vibration around it that circumstances and events are happening around you, and now your action is being affected. So that was just the gentle progress. But today, we are not encouraging action before the vibration. In other words, we are really proponents of taking action from an inspired stance rather than from a motivated stance. And the reason that we wrote that in the way that we did is because there are so many people that say, well, I'll do this action, and if I do this action, then it will affect this feeling. And we say, well, what happens if you're doing an action from a vibrational vantage point that's not where you want it to be, then law of attraction just brings you more around that, so your life just gets more complicated rather than less complicated. Things get worse rather than better. It's better to create from the inside out, which means adjust the feeling, which means find the thought that feels differently, and then, by your own words, focus upon that thought until it becomes more. And as you shore up that vibration so that it becomes a stronger point of your vibrational point of attraction, then all things that come to you come in response to this newfound vibration.
That is behaviors. Is that what you're referring to?
Action will follow.
Okay.
And you make a good point, because most people, and it's the way most of you have been trained, you're taught to do this and not to do this. There is very little regard given to the way you feel. In other words, the commandments are talking about what you should do and what you should not do, mostly about what you should not do. We're not very happy with the commandments that you fashion. We would not take credit for those if we were studying it. Where what you're really wanting to do is to find the vibration by reaching for the feeling. When you think about it, the communication between who you are and you, in other words, your source energy communication, is coming in waves of feelings. In other words, love is that connection, and that feeling of eagerness is that connection, and that feeling of clarity is that connection. In other words, your greatest conscious awareness of your connection with your source are those positive emotions that flow through you. So if you are reaching for thoughts that you can focus upon that produce those emotions, then a synergism begins to happen, where the more you reach for it, the more you find it, the more you find it, the easier it is to reach for it, the more you reach for it, the more you find it, until in time you're just this loved, adoring others and adoring self being who is just bipping along, having a wonderful time, not making a big deal over petty little things that somebody else has decided to make issues of in order to try to control you.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Good, I get it. Thank you, Abraham.
So what you want to say to anyone who thinks you're breaking a rule is, rules are made to be broken. No, that was something else. What you're wanting to say is, I'm guided by a greater law.
Yeah.
I'm guided by a greater law. And they will say, well, that can't possibly be. There can be no greater laws than the state of California, or there can be no greater laws than these religious laws. And then you can say to them, if they're ready to listen, I have a feeling place within me that comes straight to me from source. And I can feel when I line up with it, and I can feel when I don't. And that's what I use to determine my thought, word, and deed.
Good. Thank you.